I think we have in Europe a very telling example now over the last 5 years, particularly during the Eurozone crisis. What has become very clear is that those countries with inflexible labour laws have seen dramatic increases in unemployment, particularly of their young people. Those economies in Europe which have flexible labour laws, where employers are able to hire and fire, tend to generate far more jobs. So there's a trade-off. Rigid labour laws protect those already in permanent employment, make it very difficult to fire them. But of course the penalty that you pay for protecting those people in employment is those people, particularly young people, who are looking for jobs, find it much more difficult to find jobs. We have some experience of that in Britain. There's a trade-off. If you push minimum wages up too high, then you start affecting the ability of companies to employ. On the other hand, there is a social case for ensuring that people have a minimum income to survive. In Britain, we do this through an independent commission which is charged with making recommendations on the rate, and one of the considerations they must take into account is the potential impact on employment. So they cannot come along and say, oh, we'll have a 50% increase in the minimum wage, if that's going to mean that small SMEs are not going to be able to afford to take people on. So it has to be a balance, and we have an independent advisory body which makes recommendations based on a lot of in-depth research. Well, I think it was an enormously important development when Nepal became a member of the WTO in 2004. I think Nepal was probably the first of the least developed countries to sign up. And there has been an adjustment process as Nepal's trade policies come into line with international procedures. Personally, I hope Nepal goes further. I would like to see Nepal beginning to participate in some of the negotiations that are going on in Geneva, for example, for further liberalisation of trade in services. I happen to think Nepal has a comparative advantage in supplies of services and technology, and I think it would be wonderful if Nepal were able to participate in those international negotiations. But anyway, so far so good.